first time published, which was exciting for us, the social-emotional learning standards and approaches to play and learning standards. And what you have in the front of your folder on the left-hand side is the work, part of the work that we've done at the Franklin. So I've taken the 12 social-emotional learning standards and I've put them into I can statements. We're going to walk through those today and talk about activities that we do at school, things that you do at home that can support that learning. The goal when the state published those was they're written for pre-K and kindergarten. What I'm presenting today is the pre-K lens, so it is for anybody up until they're entering kindergarten, with the goal that the child will enter kindergarten with the self-regulation and social-emotional learning skills that they need to then go on and be confident, independent kindergarten learners. If you look at those 12 standards though, you'll see that they really are skills that even we as adults are still working on. So they are, depending on what environment we're in, or whether it's a work or a home or a stressful family situation, they're definitely skills that we need to be successful in life, whether it's with your personal relationships, professional relationships. So it was exciting that the state, Massachusetts was one of the first to come out and go ahead and publish those. They've done a lot of work. It was a combination of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the Early Childhood at two different departments, so exciting work. We are not going to talk about we call them the APLs, the approaches to play and learning, but I am going to give you a copy of them so that you'll have them. Today we'll just focus on the SELs, the social emotional learning standards. They could not get the smart board to move unless I did it myself. So I'm being flexible, modeling, demonstrating for how we need to be with our kids too. So with the teachers, what we have been doing, and I just think it makes sense, it's not that we are teaching this as a separate content area. It's embedded into everything we do, and that's the same thing at home that you would be doing, embedding it into regular, hi, welcome, come in. You're embedding it into everything that you do. So I decided today to do it through the lens of story time reading, books that you would read and things that have conversations that you would have with your children. So the first SEL, social emotional learning, is about recognizing and identifying emotions and then being able to express those emotions. Welcome.
I'm sorry, my name's Jessica.
Jessica, you do not need to apologize for being late. We moved. You must have, did you go to the?
I did, but the high school students were directly, I got caught up in a conversation with the previous presenter, and that's
It was a good conversation.
it was.
So when you think of that, Jessica, the first thing that I had people do is to look inside your folder. You'll see 12 social emotional learning standards on that left-hand side. And if you think of your child or children as strengths or weaknesses in any of those areas, and then right behind the blue sheet in your folder, there's or maybe it's right in front of it, a note-taking, an area for you to take notes, so that if there's a book or something that you think, oh, that's a great idea, somebody else might share an idea, you can just jot it down so you'll have the information when you get home. So if you think about if a child is having difficulty with the emotions, the first piece is, if you look right here, it's just identifying and labeling emotions. And then as you go on, if you think about, anybody know the story of Corduroy? So what's a question that you might ask your child when you're reading this, if you wanted to think about giving them some information about the social emotional learning standard, SEL1?
How did Corduroy feel when the little girl walked away? And when she didn't buy it?
What about how would you feel if you were alone in?
That's true.
Yes, he's entering this whole new world, you know, how does he feel about this big space and, you know, and like, how does he feel about that as compared to the bedroom at the end? You know, it's like, this is amazing, I guess.
And letting them talk about how would they feel if they got locked in a department store, or where would you feel afraid? Where might you feel afraid? So starting to use books as a starting point. The familiar books are those books that kids want you to read over and over again are a good place to work on. If this was an area of weakness and this was a really comfortable book for them, a good way to talk about it, because if you think about children in the moment, when they're mad or when they're scared, you're not teaching them anything. They have to just process that. But it's later on, or it's before they get themselves into that place. So I put an article in there for you, and I'm going to keep on sharing with you resources, but not give them to you unless you want them. So these backpack series is from the University of South Florida, and they are all labeled as supporting challenging behavior. So this one is how to help your child understand and label emotions. This one is how to help your child recognize sadness, recognize disappointment, recognize jealousy, and deal with jealousy. So as you think about some of these emotions that we have, this is from our second step curriculum program, pretty basic emotions. But then what the state is encouraging families to do and teachers to do is to expand the vocabulary around another word for happy. What's another word that you can use? Ecstatic. Do your children know what ecstatic means? So what I started to say, Jessica, is that our teachers are not just teaching social emotional learning standards as a separate area. They're embedding it into content. So we've done a lot of lesson studies on embedding this into, Melissa did it last year, embedding it into science, where two children need to work collaboratively together. So as you get up into like SEL, I think it's 8 or 9, where they need to communicate with others and take another person's perspective. In science or technology, that's a great way to do it, that somebody problem solves, they tell you how they problem solved, and then, but the foundation, first they need to understand those emotions. So these are 3 articles, and at the end, we'll just spread them out, so anybody who wants them, you can help yourself to them. The other option is you can give me your email, and I'll do this as a tiny URL so that it's just there and you can have those. So Corduroy is a great one for that SEL1. Anybody have any questions about SEL1? So then demonstrates accurate self-perception, and this is when we talk about children knowing their address, their first and last name, so basic information, but also knowing their family structure, who your mother and father, who all of those kinds of things, because that's the core of who they are, and learning to celebrate who they are. So some characteristics that identify them personally, what color their hair is. Do they know that their eye color could be related to your eye color? Or if they were adopted, do they know that it wasn't your eye color? Or those kind of genetic conversations that you can have with children as young as 3 and 4, so that they start to really understand who they are. Who are they in terms of their family? And then this is about the age when most children are starting to then have an identity outside of their family. So who are they outside of their family? They're not just a brother or sister or a child, but they are then become a friend or a student. So having all of those groups and having conversations about that. Another great resource, if you have not read the book Mind in the Making, it is a great book that talks about the 7 essential life skills that every child needs. And they have this resource, and I'm not sure that this resource is available unless you're a nonprofit or an educator. But great making connections. Well, the book is called Mind in the Making, but they have partnered with what an organization called First Books. So this book, anybody know this one? 10 Little Fingers, 10 Little Toes. It is talking, again, if you, as I go through it, I want you to think about, so it's not just SEL2 that you could use this for, because it also talks about differences in the pictures, if you look at the pictures. There was one little baby who was born far away, and another who was born on the very next day. And both of these babies, as everyone knows, had 10 little fingers and 10 little toes. So it's talking about identifying characteristics, but it might be that they have noticed a child in their class, or when you were at the grocery store, somebody who didn't have 10 little fingers. So being able to talk about that, what makes them who they are, and if they had something that was different about them, opportunities to talk about that, what those differences might be. And then you'll see, if you go through this, it is taking you all around the world to look at babies and mothers and fathers and family structures. So great opportunity. And again, not a book that you would typically think of as reading to a 3, 4, or 5-year-old, but if it's an area of weakness and it's a familiar book, or the simple language in this book allows you to have those kind of bedtime conversations, that the world is a really fast-paced, moving world, and the messages that children are bombarded with, we might not as adults even recognize or realize who's giving them the message about their identity, that it really needs to be the parents who are giving them that message. So taking that time, because somebody else is happy to jump in for you and give your child the message they want them to have. So taking the time to really have those thoughtful conversations. And if you have the extended family, my granddaughter, one of my granddaughters is in Anchorage, Alaska. And so since she's been born, I see her once a year, I go there and she comes to me. But we talk to each other, we FaceTimed since she was an infant. I've been calling her and singing and reading stories. So that technology piece, if you have the opportunity to have extended family, have them aware of what these SELs are too, so that they too can talk about that rich cultural history of who they are. The SEL2 also talks about helping children understand what do they like and what don't they like. What's the easiest thing to, they'll tell you loud and clear what they want to wear. Ask them though, take it to the next step, because if you see that bottom one, explain the reason for their choice. So ask them, do you know why it is that they want to wear that and not that? When it's time for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, when you're packing food, you're serving them food, and they say, I don't like that. What is it? Help them to understand and be able to really think about, do you know why you like certain foods and don't like certain foods? Like, it's really that, because if you look at it, accurate self-perception. Sometimes we just go along with the flow and don't stop to think about who we are to the core. So it's really taking time to think about that.
Donna, can I ask you a question that's
Sure.
off the basis a little bit? So I'm struggling with food choice right now, and you just bring up, do you have any book suggestions about food choice?
Robin, our nurse Robin is a great one, and you check out her website.
Okay.
And if there's nothing on there, ask her.
Okay.
She has contact information with a nutritionist, so she could also do that.
Okay.
The other one is your classroom teachers are great ones to say, help me learn how to expand.
Right.
For some children, expanding their repertoire of food sometimes is easier at school if you order a hot lunch, which isn't exactly, but
Okay.
that sometimes if they see their peers eating it, not always, I will tell you, barbecue things that come from the hot lunch are not a favorite. Kids will get that and look and think, my mother would never order that for me, I didn't get that. So
Right.
just be careful. If they don't eat it at home, they may not eat it at school, but Robin can give you some ideas. So yes, please feel free to ask, stop if you have a question related or not. Any questions about SEL2?
Sorry, could you put it back for 2 seconds?
Sure.
No.
Good. Okay, so SEL3,
Are these meant to be age-related, or
yeah,
are these
so,
supposed to be different?
yes, no, so they don't go in a sequential, it's not like they build upon each other.
Okay.
You missed my beginning, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
sorry.
That's okay, I'm glad you asked. That the state of Massachusetts, for the first time, published in June of 2015, the social-emotional learning standards and approaches to play and learning standards for pre-K and kindergarten. And so they are meant to be implemented across the state as a requirement, whether it's public preschool, private preschool, parents should be knowing about them, daycare centers should be knowing about them. Our teachers from the Franklin Early Childhood Center presented at the state STEM conference a few weeks ago out in Worcester at the DCU, and we presented to an audience of about 100 people, and just I was surveying to see who the audience was that we were presenting to. And it was college professors that are in early childhood, it was engineers, it was early childhood people. Out of that whole group, because our presentation was on embedding these social-emotional learning standards into the sciences, and out of that whole room, only 4 people had heard about them, which I was surprised about.
Right.
Yeah, the article in the, that I put in your, I hope I put it in there, talks about kids' emotions, that first one. If you read that first, and the front page of that first little blurb, I know that each one of you, you'll know when your child is frustrated and they take the block and they just smash it or throw it, or maybe it's not the block, maybe it's the tantrum around, I'm not eating that. But the range of emotions and the level of need in this area is not unique. I mean, that it should not be just 4 people working on this. So, does that help you know?
It does. I mean, as of yesterday, I sort of have this whole new personal awareness of stuff I need to be learning about my, we just had a big doctor's appointment for my son, and we're still kind of working on identifying exactly what it is that he struggles with. But one of the things he really struggles with is he doesn't do well with large groups of children or people. And he was the one who actually, he's almost 5, yesterday at the doctor's office, he came out and said, I don't like when there's lots of kids. I just don't like that. But he's never, ever, ever, how most people, when they see a group of people doing something, they're like, oh, I'll do what the group is doing. He has no herd instinct.
If you think of yourself, if you went into a party and you didn't know anybody, it is the same for children when they're going into a new environment.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm not talking about a new environment.
Okay.
This is just how he is with large groups, and he just says, I don't like being around large groups of people. So I'm looking specifically for things to help him feel more comfortable, as for instance, he goes into a school where he's going to be in a class of 20 kids, and that base setting makes him feel very uncomfortable. So it's like, how do I give him the skills to function in a setting that is innately uncomfortable.
Yeah, so we will, you will, I hope that the information that I share along the way in the resources on that last page, there has been lots and lots of work around this recently,
Great.
around supporting parents, supporting teachers, administrators, and it is, although the state has only gotten to pre-K and K, their promise is to do up to grade 12 in these, but you can, if you look at them, they do go. This work that I'm sharing doesn't go up to grade 12. This is just what I'm presenting, is what we would think about from birth to about 5 or 6 years old.
Great.
And this is what they're expecting children to have mastered by the time they enter kindergarten. The goal is that they will have this under their belt so that they will be successful. And the good news is that if they have not mastered it, you as a family, you will need to help communicate that to the school so that they understand these are things we're working on at home. Help me to work on them at school. I want to know that information. You might hear it from the school too, that they're sharing it with you, that this is an area that we are working on with them. So SEL3 is self-advocacy in developing that sense of competence and confidence in themselves. And this is one area where parents definitely need to help children understand that what's an appropriate risk to take and what's an inappropriate risk to take. So what's an appropriate risk?
Like trying a new part of a jungle gym or
Trying a new part of a jungle gym. And the piece that I think is new, we think of kind of social emotional learning and behavior as we need to discipline children, but sometimes we forget that we have to teach children and breaking down the task. So let them try that new piece of equipment. Then if they ask or they need help or they're seeming to struggle with it, maybe not in the moment, but at another time, talk about what I noticed you were trying. So we have purchased new equipment at the Franklin intentionally. When I took a look at what we were buying, I wanted the equipment to challenge them, to be open-ended enough that they had to think about, we have a half circle, a half moon, half cylinder, I guess it is, that they have to climb up to the top. They have to then kind of turn their bodies around or they're going to be heading head first down there. But it is so, I get the luxury that it's right outside my window, so I get to watch the kids, and it is so interesting to see them. Lots of the kids get up to that top hat and they just jump off because they don't know, nobody has told them. Like maybe you could, did you ever think about turning your body and going down? So if you think about when babies first learned how to slide down the back, there's another piece of equipment. It looks like two sets of butterfly wings, and the way that it's curved can present some challenges to kids. Some kids we need to give them a bigger risk to say, see if you can get up and over the top. So really helping them. And then celebrating their tries. Even in talking about when you, either at work or in your relationships, when you have not done so well, but you tried, and then you tried again. So as a parent, really narrating those pieces for you, for them, so that they can understand. Those uses skills for daily living is getting dressed, picking out their own clothes within limits. What they wear on Saturday and Sunday, you might have different ideas about what they wear when they go to grandma's house or when they go to a holiday. And really helping them to understand and take responsibility for those choices. And when I say teach, you certainly want to provide them with the supports that they need in the right places about taking risks, trying new things. So if you're in, again, please don't feel like you have to take anything. Tangrams are a great way to have kids thinking differently. Does anybody, do you know about tangrams? So tangrams, these are tangrams. Every set of tangrams you buy will always have the same configuration. So you can take one, they're cardstock, so you're gonna cut them apart. And then you can Google tangrams. I gave you a copy of Sea Life. So tangrams can be used to create any kind of shapes, but they are, you'll see when you look at this one you can tell, if you look closely, you can tell what pieces. So you want to start with helping them be successful, but then you want to get it so that it's a little bit harder. So this is just a set that if you have a laminator, you can take your same pieces, cut them apart, and laminate them. So that a great thing to give kids when they have to wait at the doctor's office, or it doesn't take much to have a little set of tangrams in the car, and you usually can Google tangrams and come up with all, they're seen sometimes on transportation, or there's all different ones, and they can be hard or easy. They can be sets that are, this one is a wooden set. I'm going to pass it. You look oftentimes at Barnes and Noble on that reduced for clearance table. You'll see them, and then you'll see it goes from up to some really difficult ones. But take on the challenge and let them see you try to figure it out. And then talk about what strategies. Like some people are really, that's a strength for them to be a visual learner. In other people, it is not a strength. So how, again, if you go back to SEL 2, understanding who we are and what is our makeup, tangrams are a great way to help kids to understand what a challenge looks like, and how, as we try, that persistence, that ability to persevere is a really great strength, and it's a strength that is identified as the most successful people are people who are able, they might not be good at this, but they have perseverance, that they continue to try. Not doing the same thing over and over again and failing, and that's where you as a parent comes in. To really help them understand that.
In terms of independence and taking cognizance of their own skills and experiences, I feel like as a parent, my initial instinct was to say, well, when you show me that you can behave and that you can be responsible in these ways, then I'll give you more independence in those ways. And in my experience so far has been, that's not really working. Okay. What I'm finding is that if I give him more independence, if I give him more independence, then I get more independence. Do you see what I mean? Like, rather than making it a sort of quid pro quo, which frankly he's not actually able to engage in, like, if I do this, I'll get that.
So the administrative team did an interesting exercise the other day on our optimal learning zones. Do we learn most when we are in our safe zone, our risk zone, or our danger zone? And I think thinking about that with kids too, the group that I was working with was a special ed, the assistant superintendent of special ed, what is it saying, maybe somebody from the high school administrative team, and we decided to make ours instead of concentric circles, we made it into snowmen and put the biggest spaces on the bottom. People tend to be in their safety zone. That's the time we spend most of the time. That's not where we're going to grow. Where are we going to grow? We're not going to grow and learn new skills unless we go into that risk or the danger zone. Right. And what makes it a danger zone? Like helping recognize when it's a danger zone for your child, and then what you can do to help What do you do for yourself? Like at work, if the boss is asking you to go into the danger zone, what is that danger zone for you? And what do you do? So these are just some ideas for you. This is, I don't know if anybody knows Mo knows Mo. Oh my goodness, so I'm so clever. But today I will fly. Do you know this one?
No, that was specifically.
Oh my goodness, it's just too funny. So the pig's going to fly, and the elephant, no, you will not fly. And so it goes through, I will try again, I did not fly. You are flying today. So pig has met a duck. Who's gonna help him fly.
I think we did something.
I am not flying. He knows he's not flying. My friend, you can fly, she can fly. I mean, it's just a great opportunity for you to laugh and be silly and have fun and understand what question marks and exclamation marks mean in right reading. So again, you hear me talking about embedding those ELA standards in oral language standards into the social emotional piece. You are not flying? I'm getting help. So that piece on who can help you? Like if you need help, this is a standard where they want kids to understand. Who would you go to if you needed help for that? So he goes to a friend, and a friend can help him with that. But lots of rich conversation that you could have. Again, maybe not when they're temper tantruming because they couldn't do what they wanted to do on the climbing structure, but maybe that night you remember this kind of a book and you think, this is a great, I wonder, that's kind of like, remember when you thought you were going to be able to do that, and it was giving them the opportunity to really talk about that and problem solve and come up with ideas. So then these are some visuals of things that we use at school to support children. So picture day for some children is horrible. They have never been without their family and they don't know what it's going to be about. So this is a social story about picture day. A social story really is just a book that you write with your child. You walk them through a problem that they're concerned about. So this is one of the teachers made. While I'm waiting in the line, someone may try to fix my hair or my clothes. This is okay. They just want me to look nice for my pictures. Because we tell kids, don't let anybody touch you. And then there's a stranger, and my mother or father, nobody's there to say okay. So this goes through. When it's my turn, I will sit in the chair. The person taking my picture may tell me to do something like say cheese. My parents and my teacher will be proud of how well I did getting my picture taken. In a few weeks, I will get the pictures back. So I cut out a few things, but just so that you'll get the idea. The social story is just a little book that you put together. You can use Google Images, but a problem you know your child is having, mastering something that's getting in the way. You might write one, or is your child in school?
He is, he's in the private preschool.
So you might ask the teacher to help you write a social story about big groups and little groups.
Yeah.
Usually, a social story is for home, for school, and you read the same one over and over again. So they are powerful. The other piece is, what would all of you do without your Google schedules, without your phone? Somebody takes your phone away. Well, we send kids to school without knowing the schedule. So we have in every one of our classrooms a visual schedule. You can make a visual schedule at home too. It's that sense of predictability, like in the morning, just Google images of I get dressed, I have my breakfast, I get my backpack. Whatever it is, the order in which, and let them see that order, and that comfort reduces the anxiety of things that, just like you knowing your calendar, or knowing how many days you have to get ready for Thanksgiving, or anything you're looking forward to reduces that cognitive load for yourself, so it's the same for children. This is
They have
in
so many calendars.
You do?
Yeah, they have their own, they have like 3 of their own calendars, for
Oh, wow.
different things, yeah. They fill it out, we write it together.
Right.
It's fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
the big one that they have for the month, we make one for the week,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
they love
So
it.
kids that are giving you a hard time about the routine, you want to take yourself out of it, give them a visual of the routine to support them and then back off and let them do it. Give them a checklist that they've gotten it done. It's that sense of accomplishment and taking pleasure in the mastery of skills. Toilet training, same thing. When you were toilet training, giving them those visuals and just even the first step of taking their socks off, taking their pants down. You don't have to do the whole entire, we think we have to toilet train and every single step has to be taken care of. Maybe it is breaking those tasks down into smaller chunks. Anybody know about first then boards? So a first then board, again, easy for you to make at home. Usually it's a non-preferred activity, that's something they don't want to have to do, and then a preferred activity. I know eating your supper is hard, but after we finish, first we're going to eat our supper, and then we're going to read a story. Then we're going to take a walk. So first you're going to do this, and then you're going to do that, and helping them to see it. Easy, so simple. Something about Velcro for kids, being able to take those pictures off and put those pictures on is really powerful. When you go someplace, again, this is looking at what are they able to do and how long can they. At school, I don't know, if there was siblings or if they're in a line or you're having to wait someplace, a kiosk at a vacation place, being able to give them a visual of how far apart, like just take all of that language that you're using about don't touch it, don't do that, don't stand on there, don't do that. Think about what visual can I give them to have them understand where it is that they're, again, it's that teaching as opposed to disciplining them, teaching them, giving them the supports that they can. So this is just, you see, spaced out enough. The waiting for 15 children to use the bathroom is a long time for a little one. So up above you'll see there are activity cards that the teachers do use to engage the kids so that they're the quick image math cards, it's a letter cards, it's nursery rhymes. You can put those kinds of things in your pocketbook. Things that you can pull out that if waiting is hard, you wouldn't want someone to be nagging you all the time. If you weren't successful at something or something was really hard, you would want someone to give you the support that you need to be successful. And that's that SEL, understanding where they're at and giving them the support. So the articles that I have for this one are understanding how to support transitions and understanding what the expectations are and smoothly transitioning between places and activities, how to have a successful bedtime. So those articles are here. Any questions about that SEL? No? Is it making sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so having empathy, and this is a hard one for kids, to take somebody else's perspective. Have we reached one that is hard, that anybody identified as one that was hard for your child?
The last one.
The last one. Okay. So, did I skip over?
I think you might have.
Impulse
skip
control.
forward. Yeah.
I did skip over 4.
But you talked a lot, some about it, with the transitions from one environment to the next.
So the impulse control and stress management. And really helping them to understand when you feel stressed, what makes you feel stressed, and what do you do to be calm. I think for a long time people used timeout, go to timeout, and it was a punishment. I will encourage you to use timeout and as a place where you think about, where do you go when you're feeling stressed? You don't want somebody punishing you. You want to go to your cozy place. And kids are great at building forts. Like, if this is your cozy place, this is your place. I can tell your heart, I can tell your heart, I can tell the language you're using. You might need to go to your quiet space. And helping them have a quiet space when they're feeling cranky or whatever it is, but not as a punishment area, as a place that they go where they can relax and feel calm, and help them to identify and set it up with you. Maybe it's a blanket that they build into a cozy spot for themselves. So then this blanket wouldn't be used anywhere else. It's just that. It's just for that.
We had something called a chill-out chair
Yeah.
for a while, but my experience with it was that sort of worked, but that what my son anyway seemed to need most was more of a sense of connection. And that when he was in the chill-out chair, he wasn't, a lot of what he needed to kind of calm himself and feel reassured was he needed physical connection, specifically with me or my husband. So we ended up using something that was a little bit more like a time in, like a here, come and be with me for a while, and we're just gonna sit, and we're not gonna try and do anything, we're just gonna sit and and be together and possibly get deaf. But, because that physical connection seemed really important to him. That's not as practical in school.
So that's what you want to think about. Is it realistic to self-soothe as opposed to depend on somebody to soothe you? So if you can, try to get them to become independent and to develop the skills. What is it? How are they going to be able to do this when they are not at home? Because we see it at school often with kids that it's hard to soothe them because the only one who has ever soothed was the parent. And now they're at school and something's happened and they're needing to call on skills that they don't have. So pinwheels are great, and you can each take a pinwheel if you would like, because we talk about taking a deep breath and blowing it out.
That is great.
It just is easy. It is easy. Well, easy and they like can't.
That is genius.
It's really.
Can I take another one?
Yes, you are welcome to take them if you will use them.
That is fabulous, Donna.
Yeah, that's actually a really good.
But just a sense of, can't really do that too hard.
Yeah.
Like it just calls on a good happy
That's
place.
fabulous.
And again, you're not going to have this as a toy. This is your calm. But you have your calm down basket, your calm down. These are some visuals. I just took pictures for you to see that we use at school when we notice the volume is getting a little loud. And first you have to teach, like this volume, when we are outside, we could turn it up to 10. When we're having a dance party, we could turn, when we're doing our work, when it's rest time. So having that visual for them, so it's not you yelling to them, be quiet. You give this to them in the bedroom, where do you think the volume might be? So it's helping them to take responsibility again, so that they're not always depending on you to tell them. Because then it does this instead of taking responsibility. This is another one. This one can be used not just for, so there's an arrow here and you can point to it. So this one she's made as noise as well. But I've seen this same thing as activity levels, used for activity level. Like your activity level in church might be different than in the grocery store, might be different than at the playground. And how fast should we use, how should we be moving at the playground? Which one should be at the playground, kind of moving? And then timers are another great visual for how much more time. I'm going to set the timer, and when the timer's finished, we need to move to something else. So great tools for parents to use. A good book that everybody knows is Where the Wild Things Are. Is this over at 12?
Yeah, it's okay.
Didn't get very far.
That's what happens.
That's what happened a lot.
That's good.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a lot of information.
Yeah, Jake's been really.
Well, the body com, this is again, these are our second step pictures. And so teaching kids, what are the expectations? What does a calm body look like? What does a quiet voice sound like? What does it look like when we're listening and eyes are watching? So this is for school, obviously. The child has identified what they want to earn. If they get 5, so there's on the back of this, they have things they could choose. If they get 5 stars, they get to go and do this. Again, setting the limits, putting it at you're not going to put it at 45 minutes that they have to do this. Maybe you're able to do it for 5 minutes, but being realistic in what it is. Marmy Sendak's Where the Wild Things Are is a great place for you to start talking about, that night when Max was out of control and wild. Have you ever been out of control and wild? And what did that look like? And what do you think you could do to calm yourself down? What did Max do to calm himself down? But really being able to use those stories to that helping you be calm.
She loves those.
I'm trying to fix it.
Oh,
I almost have
Yeah, that's what I was trying to educate people.
it. Yeah.
so I will, if you're interested, I am happy to put the PowerPoint and then the resources,
Yeah, that'd be great.
these other books
Thank you.
on tiny URL so that you can access it. Well, I'll just put out a piece of paper for you so that you can give me your email addresses.
Thank you, Donna.
They are really, I think, powerful. Parents should be using them. I know that you will. Last year, our teachers focused on getting this year. Our next step is to start sharing the information on a regular basis with parents. So this is what the teachers will be doing on the December early release day with me and the social worker and school psychologist.
Oh, great.
So
Thank you, Donna.
then you will hear more about it, but I will make sure the tiny URL site. So any of the handouts that you want, please help yourself or let me know and I'll spread them out.